All right, we're live. So welcome back to DApp University. So today we're talking about some pretty big news, which is the Arbitrum scaling solution for Ethereum opening up their mainnet. All right, we're talking about what that is and why that's such a big deal today. We're going to look at a lot of other news that's happened in the space since yesterday. Again, we do these live streams Monday through Friday in this channel. Just subscribe, turn on notifications down below. You'll find out about those whenever we go live. We're going to answer some of your questions, look at the crypto markets, and a lot more. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step-by-step from start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. Last but not least, I think I'm saying this video is designed to be financial advice, and there's lots of scammers down in the comment section below. Just ignore them. Like, I'll never give you my phone number or ask you to invest with me. So we got people jumping in the chat here. We got Oleg, Lex, Automatic Beats, Abramo, Wendy, DJ, Natasha, Samir, Vega, Xavier, Kaz, Aaron, Nick. Welcome. Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump in here today. Let's talk about this first big news item that I wanted to bring up, which is Arbitrum scaling solution launching for Ethereum. Okay. So let's just pull up the story on my screen here. All right, so we've been seeing some Easter eggs around about this, but let's just go ahead and, kind of set this up and set the stage for why this is such a big deal and why it's important. So basically, we've been talking quite a bit about layer 2 scaling solutions on top of Ethereum on this channel, how the war for layer 2s is heating up. So just a quick recap, what is a layer 2? If you ever had the problem of trying to use the Ethereum network and it's been too slow, too expensive for you to use, see all these competitors pop up to try to fix that problem. Well, a lot of people don't know that you can make Ethereum a lot faster without having to get to Ethereum 2.0, which a lot of people think that's what we have to do. We have to wait all this time for Ethereum 2.0 to ship before Ethereum gets faster and cheaper to use. It's not true. So what you do is you build a second layer on top of Ethereum called a layer 2 scaling solution, which basically offloads a lot of those transactions and settles the final result back on top of Ethereum itself, okay? I've seen lots of different people put their name in the hat for shipping layer 2 scaling solutions. Optimism is a really prominent one, which has launched already with Uniswap version 3 and some others, okay? But Arbitrum, we have Arbitrum is another one, okay? And Arbitrum has been in a lot of the layer 2s have been kind of in this sort of quiet, whitelisted sort of release mode. But things are quickly changing to where layer 2s are sort of hitting this inflection point where they're going to be kind of opened up for everybody to use, and that's the point that we're reaching with Arbitrum right now. Okay, so let's talk about that. Show you on the screen here. So Ethereum scaling solution Arbitrum launches mainnet, raises $120 million in new funding. That's a lot of money. So Off-Chain Labs, a developer scaling solution Arbitrum, has launched their mainnet. All right. So the project has also raised $120 million in new funding from Lightspeed Ventures partners and participation from Mark Cuban and others. So the mainnet launch means the public can now interact with decentralized applications on top of Arbitrum. All right. So that's the really big deal. So until now, developers could launch their test their apps on Arbitrum, but now users can actually use the apps. That's the important part. So we've had a situation where developers can go in there and create applications and test them out, make sure they work properly. But now it's basically the floodgates have opened. Excuse me. And this is a big deal. Okay. So Arbitrum is a layer 2 scaling solution that promises to handle many more transactions in Ethereum at lower costs, exactly what we've been saying here. Processes transactions on a side chain that uses optimistic rollup technology and then regularly settles them in batches on the main Ethereum blockchain. Okay, so some people talk about it's a little bit misleading with the wording there. I don't think it's intended to be misleading. I think it's just you have to clarify. You have other scaling solutions that are side chains where you bridge over to that side chain and then do a bunch of transactions and then come back onto Ethereum. But Arbitrum is different in the sense that you actually use Ether to pay transaction fees, and the results of the transactions actually get settled back onto Ethereum. That's the difference in my mind of what a layer 2 is. And let me talk about what's likely to happen with Arbitrum and Optimism and others as they're launching with their public networks where people can actually use them. Which is likely to see an explosion of activity and incentives for applications to launch on them to get people to use it. So we've seen this already. We're starting to see this with networks like, Avalanche and Phantom's now doing this, where you have, these liquidity mining incentives, try to get people on the networks. Okay. And basically, I have a feeling that we'll likely see the same type of thing for Arbitrum and also probably Optimism and any other layer twos that come out down the road, where you're going to have applications migrate to those and probably some incentives to move liquidity to those networks. Now, that being said, I could see these being a lot stickier than some of the other sort of incentive programs, where the common pattern with the other incentive programs is essentially you have people like, launch these incentives on the network, and then essentially the activity evaporates whenever, the incentives dry up. So an example would be, you have a yield farming application. It's like, we're going to give you all this APY to come bootstrap our network. Well, people bridge over. They do that, and then they just absolutely leave whenever the gains disappear for the coins, or, the liquidity mining bonuses run out. Okay. So with something like, Arbitrum or Optimism, or some of these layer 2 scaling solutions, at some point I have a feeling that one of these, if not a handful of them, will actually get some staying power with the liquidity on the networks. Because at the end of the day, I have a pretty strong bets on some of the ETH layer 2s gaining wide adoption. That's one of the predictions I made earlier this year, is we'd see wide adoption of layer 2 technology in 2021, and it looks like we're getting to the point where that's possible. And so one of the reasons is basically, one of the things that gives Ethereum value is this network effect. So basically, the more applications that are on top of it that are compatible with one another, the more you can do on a network without having to change to a different network, the more valuable that network specifically is. Okay. And so the long-term value proposition for the Ethereum network is to actually have layer 2s when we migrate over to ETH 2.0. So it's like, we're not just going to have layer 2s for a little while and then get rid of them. We're going to have them for the long term. So my thinking here is that at some point, we'll probably see some incentives launch on a layer 2 that will end up being sticky, because those, if that particular layer 2 actually gains a network effect and produces that stickiness, then it actually creates a long-term value proposition to be a dominant layer 2 in the long-term Ethereum vision. Okay, so now that being said, we don't know exactly which one that's going to be. Okay, one of the reasons we're seeing Optimism and Arbitrum launch, and why it's we can see them adopted so quickly, there's lots of reasons, but one of the big ones is you don't have to make any code changes to your app. Really, not any real big code changes in order to port the applications over, so you can move the apps really quickly. So you don't have to rewrite them from scratch. That's the whole point. Whereas some layer 2 scaling solutions that aren't as widely adopted yet, you might have to do that, okay? And so we're going to probably see a lot of apps just move over, a lot of kind of fireworks go off in the short to midterm. But at some point, I think we'll likely see some of these scaling solutions stick around for good in terms of their network effect. So we'll see, because right now, a lot of the scaling solutions coming out right at this point are optimistic rollups based, but later we do have zero knowledge based solutions, which do offer some significant advantages over optimistic rollups. But at the end of the day, what gets adoption earliest could provide a pretty strong competitive advantage, even if the technology of the other is marginally better. So we'll see. So let's look at a couple other things regarding this. Let me pull it up. So if you want to look at the activity on top of Arbitrum, so we did have RBScan. Let's see here. So if you want to actually start looking at activity on top of Arbitrum, you can check it out on RBScan. Okay, this is basically like Etherscan, the block explorer for Ethereum, but now you can use it for Arbitrum. All right, you can actually look at the activity that's settled on top of here. And you can actually look at the transactions and blocks in real time. And it's got all the nice user experience of something like Etherscan. Yeah, it's awesome. So speaking of layer twos, we do have a lot happening on the optimism front, which is, the other predominant optimistic rollup based technology. And one thing that's really cool about this is that we're seeing some significant improvements in the user experience for layer twos, particularly for optimistic rollups. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically, at the end of the day, the rollup technology does have some trade-offs, okay? So one of those is a very long withdrawal time. Well, there's two problems, okay? So if you are a user of the Ethereum network right now and you want to get onto a layer two, one of the big benefits of that layer two in the first place is faster and cheaper to use. Once you get on it, the transaction fees go down significantly, all right? But bridging over to a layer two, you'll have to pay a gas fee for a lot of your assets, maybe even individually one by one, if you want to bridge them over to a layer two. That can get expensive, and that cost may not be worth, the what you want to do once you get on that layer two. So there's a couple solutions to that. And then the other, which I'll talk about in a second, the other big problem is getting off layer two. Typically there is an extended withdrawal time, sometimes like 7 days, okay? So we're seeing solutions to both of those problems. So one of them, I've talked about this a lot, is actually integration with centralized exchanges. I know a lot of people don't want to use centralized exchanges once they're on the Ethereum network because it's a very decentralized ethos. But at the end of the day, a vast majority of people are coming on and off of the Ethereum rails via centralized exchanges, and we're seeing Hop protocol come in to help some of this. Okay. So I talked about Hop the other day in my live stream. So Hop is basically helping you get around the 7-day withdrawal time and do fast settlement of your transactions off of the layer two. But what we're seeing here is actually a demo of Hop being used to send USDC, so an ERC20 token, to a centralized exchange like Coinbase. So basically, if you want to withdraw off of optimistic layer two, you'd have to perform multiple steps. You'd have to get off of Optimism, wait for several days till your transaction completely settle on Ethereum mainnet, and then move those coins from Ethereum mainnet to your Coinbase address or something like that. That could take a lot of time. But Hop will help you bypass the withdrawal time, but you can also, instead of sending it to your wallet on the Ethereum mainnet, you can just send it straight to Coinbase. Okay, so this is a pretty cool demo of that. I think that's a pretty big user experience improvement for something like this. The next thing that I'd like to really see is centralized cryptocurrency exchanges support layer two withdrawals. We're already seeing that a little bit with some specific exchanges. I forget which ones off the top of my head. We're not seeing it supported yet from major exchanges like Coinbase, for example. They might have it coming very soon. I don't know. But that's another thing that would be great, is basically whenever people withdrawing to the Ethereum network, having the option of withdrawing to Optimistic Ethereum, Arbitrum, whatever the major players are that come down the pike, so that people don't have to perform those multiple steps of getting on Ethereum, then moving over to layer two, incurring those additional fees. I think it's just a matter of time before we see that. Let's see here. So let's look at a couple other things here. So of course, NFT space is still going absolutely berserk. We're seeing the OpenSea volume absolutely explode. So $3 billion worth of trading volume in August. All right. And it's just absolute, like, look at how crazy this is. Okay. So I can't even, the resolution on the y-axis here is not, it's very, very, it's not very high resolution. So I'm just going to guess and say this is like, $250 million right here for July. And we basically went to over $3 billion. So we over 10x the volume in a month. That's absolutely crazy. That's one of the metrics that I see floating around that makes me think that we're at a euphoric blow off top for NFTs, because this looks like a euphoric curve. We'll see. I could be dead wrong about that. Of course, not financial advice. I'm not telling you to go sell all your JPEGs, but I personally am not buying expensive NFTs right now. So that being said, we are seeing some pretty significant displays of NFTs in the broader culture. Earlier this year we saw CryptoPunks, I believe, auction off at Christie's. Right now we're seeing Bored Ape Yacht Club and Bored Ape Camel Club at Sotheby's. Okay. So they have a sale for Bored Ape Yacht Club starting on September 2nd. And Sotheby's has changed their profile picture to looks like a combo of Bored Ape Yacht Club and Bored Ape Kennel Club. So NFTs are making a pretty big wave, and I mentioned this on my Twitter a while back that a lot of people who I've talked to, sort of outside of blockchain world, just normal people that I know, whenever the blockchain comes into conversation, I almost always get asked about NFTs. I almost never get asked about DeFi. So I think that's a pretty good evidence that NFTs are pretty major for mass adoption of blockchain technology. That's anecdotal. It's a small sample, right? But I think that is very similar to what I'm hearing from other people. So another, excuse me. Another big crazy statistic I saw is, MetaMask, the Ethereum wallet, user base crosses 10 million for the first time, growing 19-fold within a year. And so that's pretty crazy because it just shows the explosion of activity around Ethereum. Okay, I mean we've seen active addresses for Ethereum go up like crazy, and of course people are using MetaMask for things beyond just Ethereum itself. They're using it to go to other EVM compatible chains. So Binance Smart Chain, any of these other ones, Polygon, and that's basically you're seeing MetaMask capture all that. And so one potential thing coming down the pike, and I don't have official news on this, so don't quote me on this. Don't think it's going to happen for sure. But there's been lots of talk about potentially MetaMask having a token. Okay, and that's one thing that could be absolutely crazy. Okay, it's because basically if they do some sort of retroactive airdrop, anybody who's used MetaMask could potentially be eligible for something like that. And if it's on a per account basis, that would be absolutely insane. Because if you're like me, you have multiple MetaMask accounts, and yeah, that'd be pretty nuts. They capture a lot of people and make them very happy. So let's actually look at the crypto markets now, and we'll get to answer some questions. So somebody was asking in the chat a minute ago what's going on with the ETH price, so we can try to answer some of those questions now. All right. Let's see here. So Bitcoin continues to be pretty boring. All right. We're kind of in this consolidation period. We have a resistance of about $50,000. I mean, yeah. I think things are still boring. I think those things I'm still cautiously bullish about Bitcoin. I don't know what it's going to do in the short term. I don't think it's just totally losing steam and it's going to bleed out for, years. Like some people think, that this is a rounded top, that we're going into more of a bear market. I don't think so. I think adoption is still name of the game. I think fundamentals are still really strong. We can look at Ether. Okay. So people were asking me a minute ago, what's going on with the ETH price? So ETH does look like it's, starting to gain some ground. Okay, we saw ETH wick above $3,400. I've been talking about this on the stream. So basically, ETH has been consolidating for a while. Typically, this is kind of how things work in ETH world. It gets kind of boring for a period of time, and then usually something significant happens in either direction, whether it's to the upside or the downside. Based upon the way the entire market's going, what the adoption's been happening for ETH, I expect it to be to the upside. Of course, not financial advice, but that's just sort of my intuition here. And so, I mean, yeah, I think ETH wants to break a new all-time high relatively soon on the grand scheme of things. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but ETH tends to rip pretty hard whenever it moves. You can see it here. 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 Okay, I mean, you can see it here. You can see it all over the place, and you can see a lot of this boring activity before it happens, okay? So, and I remember pretty specifically what it felt like every single time we were here before it happened, and it kind of feels the same way. So, we'll see. I mean, this might get a little more boring before then, but that's what I think is going to happen. Somebody says 12K in 3 months. I'd be okay with that. I mean, think about it this way. I mean, I'm still maintaining my long-term, price target as ETH as 10K. It's super realistic. All right. I try to be very cautious with my price predictions because the last thing I want to do is be that guy who sits up here and hypes up everybody's expectations and then everyone is horribly let down. So, I mean, I think 10K is very realistic. It's only basically a 2x away from our last all-time high. Okay. So, yeah, I think it's very possible. Honestly, I think it's very likely that ETH goes higher than that. But I just don't want to get anybody's expectations too high. I also personally don't want to get my own expectations too high. Because like I said, last thing I want to do is overestimate what's going to happen and then be horribly disappointed. Especially when you're talking about, I mean, because for me personally, like I was saying, I think somebody asked me what my allocation to ETH is, and it's fine. I'll tell you stuff in full transparency, but also help you think about how I think about it. So I think my ETH allocation is about 85%. It might be close to 90% now. And so basically, why is that? Well, it's because ETH has presented the best risk reward scenario of putting a vast majority is a highly concentrated bet because of everything that's been happening on the network, the security of the funds on the network itself, the liquidity if you want to sell any ETH, the ability to stake it, all this type of stuff. That's one of the reasons I've made a massive, massive, massive bet on ETH in terms of percentage portfolio allocation. So that being said, if that's the thing I'm watching the most, then I don't want to have inflated expectations of what's going to actually happen. I want to be very realistic with my price targets. Okay, so let's get into some questions here. Okay, so let's see here. Somebody says Bored Ape Yacht Club has a great community and metaverse integrations. Awesome. So can I explain the triple halving? Yes, it's a good question. I'll explain it. So the triple halving is talking about ETH's move to proof of stake and what that's going to do to the ETH issuance. All right. So it's actually, before we answer, well, I'll do it after the question. Excuse me. So let's talk about what the Bitcoin halving is in the first place. This is where the name comes from. So with the Bitcoin blockchain, new Bitcoin is created whenever new blocks are mined. So anytime, I send one Bitcoin from my account to yours, I'm creating a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, and the entire blockchain is made up of bundles of transactions. These are records which are bundled, they're grouped together in blocks, which are chained together to make up the blockchain. That's what it is. And so basically, you have miners on the blockchain that are just computers that run the entire blockchain itself. And they're the ones that are responsible for actually taking your transaction and including it into the blockchain. Okay, so they're financially incentivized to do this with two ways. One, block rewards. The blockchain actually produces new Bitcoin whenever new blocks are mined. And then also when you pay the fees. So they get a cut of both of those things. They get paid to help run the network, all right? So the Bitcoin blockchain, like I said, produces new Bitcoin, and that's one of the ways that these miners are paid. Now, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets paid to these miners gets cut in half. Okay, that's what the halving is. So, in 2020, we had a halving. In 2024, we'll have a halving. In 2016, we had a halving. So ETH, all right, that's what the halving is. So ETH is going to undergo a triple halving, which is what people are talking about whenever we go to proof of stake. So right now, prior to EIP 1559, which just went live, within the last month or so, the ETH issuance was about 4%, okay? Which means that every year, or the ETH annual inflation was about 4%, which means every year the ETH supply was increasing by about 4%. So whenever we move to proof of stake, that's going to get essentially cut in half 3 times, hence the triple halving, which would make the actual issuance about 0.5%. That's a triple halving, so 4 to 2 to 1 to 0.5. That's 3 times. Triple halving reduces supply significantly. That's what the triple halving is. Now, here's the crazy thing is whenever you combine the triple halving with EIP 1559, which just went live, within the past month or so, it actually makes ETH deflationary. So you take that issuance and say the blockchain's only producing about 0.5% inflation per year, but EIP 1559, what it did was basically said anytime people send ETH around, they pay transaction fees to do that. Those are the fees on top of the Ethereum network. That fee gets split up into 2 parts, the base fee and the miner tip, and the base fee gets burnt, okay? So now if people use it, Ethereum network like crazy, that base fee is getting burned, and it's actually burning more ETH than the 0.5% annual issuance, and it's causing ETH to become deflationary by nature. And so that's what you can see here on a website like Ultrasound Money. You can actually watch the ETH supply, and you can look at the peak expected supply. So basically, Ethereum will have a theoretical maximum, and then because the network keeps getting used and ETH is getting burned, then it's just going to gradually go down over time, but it's going to reach a peak. And you can kind of simulate when the merge date is. I don't think it's going to be on the 30th of January. It might be. That would be awesome. Let's just put it back into March and see what happens, and then you'll see it there. I mean, it could be earlier. It could be December. I really don't think it's going to be November or December of this year. I would be surprised if that were the case. But I'll be happy as long as it's, goes through its normal process of being carefully implemented, which I have a feeling. I don't have a feeling. I have very little doubt that that's the case. How much of a blockchain developer's job is security focused rather than product focused? 50-50 are going to be roles be separate. I mean, you always have to be thinking about, like, if you're designing Solidity smart contracts, you always have to be thinking about security at one level or another. Because at the end of the day, like, no, you don't want to be not thinking about security at all, and then basically you just, shove your code in front of an auditor, and then they realize you haven't even thought about it at all, and it's more work for them. So here's the thing: the auditors are probably one of the most highly paid, positions in tech, like period. And so their time is insanely valuable. So you need people to like, kind of do their own due diligence before you just shove your work in front of an auditor, because the other thing about the auditors are backed up like crazy. So the last thing you want to happen is work on a project for a really long time and then shove it in front of an auditor and they're like, hey, we can't do this. We have a bazillion other people who are in our queue who want to work with us. We're just going to bump you and we're going to take them. So you definitely want to make it as easy as possible for the auditors. I believe ETH will go out of the game after the proof of stake. Why we need it after proof of stake? Please advise. Why would we not need it after proof of stake? That's the better question. Why would it go out of the game after proof of stake? Yeah, I don't know. Ran out of my water. All right, everybody, that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out so that more people can learn about blockchain. If you're as fascinated with this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? You can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I can show you become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.